We are live, guys. My name's Mr. Haywood. I'm going to be teaching you AP Calculus this semester through the computer screen. And boy, it's going to be fun, let me tell you. Just kidding. AP Calculus this semester. I got to mute myself over here. Get the double. There we go. Hello, everyone. How many people we have in here? We got Sweet Tea and Biscuits has got the blue wrench, so we're in good shape over here. We got 10 people. We've got a few teachers in here. We may have a few more. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to go around and introduce each other, introduce yourselves. And then what we're going to do is to talk a little bit about what happened in the spring with our COVID response and remote teaching. And then hopefully it's going to be a better scenario this semester, but it'll definitely have a little more structure to it than what we went through last time. But just we've got a lot of different states represented and that kind of thing. So I'm going to do quick introductions. We're going to talk about our day jobs, but we all are part of the bearded community. So this is my YouTube channel, Beards and Banjos. You can find me on Instagram as well. But I am a high school math teacher. I've been teaching 22 years. And started at a large traditional high school with like 1,500 students, and then have since then moved to some early colleges, some smaller. They're still high schools, but they're on college campuses. So that throws a whole nother thing in the mix. Joe, we were talking about some of the stuff earlier. Yeah, we're having to deal with. Okay, now we're on the college campus. All of our 10th, our 11th, and 12th graders take college courses, so they have to kind of follow what the college says. So it's very interesting on that. But let's go around the horn here. Matthew, let's go around clockwise, at least on my screen clockwise.
Sounds great. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name's Matt Canada, and I'm with the Brothers Groom. And by day, I am a high school assistant principal. So I've been in education for, I think this is 14th or 15th year. I'd have to stop and count.
You lose track after a while.
It does. So
how long you've been married? How many years?
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah. So I'm a high school administrator from Indiana, Southern Indiana, and I'm in a building with 1,500 high school students. So
my name is Barbaro Joe, or Mr. Ayers, as Brian did his introduction. I teach advanced 10th grade English and a hybrid film that's half British lit, a senior class that's half British lit, half film. I do some film stuff on my channel if you like film analysis. Sounds like we have similar size school, Matt. We've got about 1,600 in our building. Okay. I've been doing this for 19 and a half years. Actually, this is going to be year 20 and a half. And I'll also be offering some insights tonight of what happens when you teach in one district and your kids go to school in a different district. Yep. And even those districts abut, there can be some night and day decisions going on there.
And I am John. On here, I'm the Flying Beardsman. You'll see me on my channel doing like interviews and things like that in the bearded community. But by day and by trade, I am a music teacher in middle school. I teach general music. I've been in education now, for 11 years, and I love it. It's a weird time that we're in right now. And Joe, what you were just talking about is actually at play too. My stepsons are in one school district and I teach in another. And it is just, it's a very interesting thing. But in my middle school, we have about 1,000 students right now. I teach in a school that's, it's in a sort of an inner city area. So our demographic is very diverse. And but it's a blast, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It's a great profession.
John, is yours a 6, 7, 8 middle school, a 7, 8, a 7, 8, 9? How does your middle school go?
6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Did we say what state we were in? I'm in North Carolina. Oh. Matthew, you're in
Indiana.
Joe's in Pennsylvania. And John's in Delaware.
Correct.
Delaware, neighbor, kind of.
Yes, that's close enough. That's right. Yeah.
Close enough. All right.
Well, I'll keep you guys all settled down here with the Midwest. So
keep us honest.
That's right. That's right.
We had a couple other guys who may or may not join us. We had another Brothers Groom, and then we had Dan C. has just gotten back from like a 4-hour drive from his camping trip. So he said he wasn't sure if he was going to make it in or not. So they may pop in. So I have to keep my eyes down here at the little, what is it called? The green room or whatever. I can bring them
yeah.
if I see them. But just I see everybody in the comments. Great to have you guys. I will say for my channel, I do want it to be family friendly, and we start talking about some of these subjects. It can be a little bit touchy. I don't really want to debate politics or any of that kind of stuff. That's not really what we're here for. So just to let you guys know that. But just to reflect, I'm going to reflect a little bit on what happened in March. Is what it was. So our school district in like the second week of March came out with a 52 slide presentation about all of these things we're going to do if there's a case in North Carolina, if there's a case of COVID in our county, if there's a case in one of our schools, and all these procedures. 2 days later, the governor said, no, we're going to just shut everything down. So that happened over my spring break. So like, I really didn't get a spring break. And then we came back from that and we had to go switch everything to online. So I was chatting with Holly earlier, and she was talking about the term, we had to learn how to, what was it? Build the plane while we were flying, that kind of deal. Except me being an expert math teacher, you think I would be good at this stuff, but it's like I've only ever built buses before, and now all of a sudden I have to build an airplane, and I don't even know how to use the tools.
Yep.
So that was the biggest issue for me is when we went to online learning is I was just trying to make it through. So I had this big notebook of stuff, and I was just taking pictures of it and throwing it up there and doing the best we could. But one of the biggest issues I had, I think some schools struggled with having kids that had all the resources to be able to do things at home, the internet and the device. I think I was pretty good with that, but I had issues with there was zero accountability on the students to do any work, right? We were told that we cannot grade them. We can see how many assignments they turn in, and we have to give them feedback, but you could not give them a grade. Whatever grade they had when we started was the lowest grade they could have. If they turned in all of their assignments, they could get 12.5 points added to whatever their grade was. So that was kind of how that worked for me. And my frustration was once the kids realized that they really didn't have any obligations, that some of them checked out, some of them didn't. But I felt like that the ones that were ready to go were kind of held back a little bit because they were trying to keep everything equitable across the board. So that's kind of where my reflection on some of the stuff in the spring. Matthew, it'd be real interesting to hear what you guys were going through, especially being a principal. You had a little bit more of the communications going with the district.
Right. So, same time, March 13th, Friday the 13th. Announcement come out at 2:00 in the afternoon that we were going to shut down for 2 weeks, and that was going to be a week off, spring break, and then that second week off. And so at that point, we were just very hopeful to return. Well, then as the pandemic, got stronger, I suppose, then we shut down with the stay-at-home orders that many states experienced. And then we moved to strictly virtual learning. And Brian, just as your district done, we also kind of held harmless those student grades. And so, there was some grading, there was some accountability, there was some feedback. But at the same time, the student volume of work really, wasn't adequate from, the in-person classroom standpoint. So, working with that, and then it was just hang on until the end of the year as far as that goes. And, we live in a community where we have a lot of kids connected. We are one-to-one school, so every student had a device. But a lot of times that rural connection just wasn't strong enough to support, that advanced online learning. Plus, that was brand new for our teachers, brand new for our school, brand new for our students. And so we were trying to make the best of it, but it was a struggle for sure.
Yeah, there's a huge difference, and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat can go along with this. You think you've got good internet, right? You can watch a video without it lagging and stuff, but that's totally different than trying to watch a live stream or be in a live stream. It's something about it just sucks up the bandwidth. It makes it tough. So then you start talking about these buzzwords like You've got synchronous learning, you've got asynchronous learning, you've got blended learning. and kind of what all of that was. And I ended up doing a combination. I was so glad I knew how to make YouTube videos. So instead of kids being able to get together and do group stuff and to discover the math concepts, which is kind of what they've gone over to over the past 10 years, is more discovery learning. Well, now we had to go back to spoon feeding. So I would like make a 7 to 10 minute video of me covering a concept and working a couple of problems. And that was always there for them. And then 4 or 5 times a week, we would have like a 25 to 30 minute class where they'd all get on the Zoom meeting, and I would kind of supplement. I would talk them through some stuff, do some extra problems. Once I really learned how Zoom worked, Zoom is my favorite because you have the breakout groups, and that worked really well. So I'm be interested to see how some of these other teachers, what kind of tools they use coming up. And I figured out some stuff. I figured out now how I can use my iPad for a write screen. When I'm on a Zoom meeting, I can write on this and it shows up. Learn how to use my document camera to get it to go through Zoom. So just a huge learning curve on all of the technology stuff.
You know, you talk about that. So as administrator, my primary role is, I guess, the disciplinarian guy. And it was interesting. I kept busy even with virtual learning, and students were popping in classes that they weren't in. You know, they had friends and they could sign in anonymously, you know, so they were kind of there to crash the party. And so I was trying to track them down.
You had to do some sleuthing online. I had to start tracking IP addresses.
And I couldn't get some of those kids to go to their own class online, but they were popping in others. So I didn't understand what was going on. Yeah,
luckily I didn't have that problem. The school I go to is for the gifted students, and they go on to like MIT and all that kind of stuff. So I don't have the discipline issues, and I know some other people may. So somebody help me keep up with the questions here. I'm not so good at doing these live streams. I haven't done tons of them, but Holly,
I got you, Brian.
You got okay. So Barber Dojo's all over that. Joe, you want to talk a little bit about your experience?
Sure. And Sweet Tea, I see your question. I will end my experience with Sweet Tea's question too, so that it doesn't get lost.
You know who that is?
No.
That's Holly from Whiskey and Hardtack, the owner of Whiskey and Hardtack.
Oh, right. Sweet Tea and Biscuits. That's the other business with the
business. She's all into business.
Yes, she
I
is.
had similar but different to what Brian was saying. We had what we call in the business a basement grade, which means that the kids could not score below that. All right. And I get it, and I supported it, but you know, kids are kids, and I teach bright kids, and the bright kids, even though they're motivated, were like, "Oh, you mean I can't get anything less than a 70% no matter what I do?" You know, and that got problematic in that I think it also affected student attendance to the live sort of environment. Now, with this kind of environment, we were given no protocol, no anything. So what I elected to do, just from my gut, was to have 2 40-minute meetings a week with both of my classes. Not nearly as much, obviously, as I'm in a block schedule school, right? So I actually teach class for 85 minutes a day. Each period is 85 minutes. So half of a class, and then doing it 2/5 of the week. And what I found is that at first everyone was good, like from like March to the end of April, and then the trickle started coming. And then by end of April, about a month in or so, I was getting maybe 20-25% attendance on these things. And there was nothing I could do about it. So you compile that with the basement grade, and it became problematic. And I teach, like Brian was saying, a lot of my kids, I'm in an affluent district in Western Pennsylvania. A lot of my kids are going on to Ivies or very good schools, and they're dialed in. They want to learn. They want to succeed. And even they were just like, screw this, you know. So that will obviously be a challenge coming up for this upcoming school year. The other thing is, though, we kind of had a leg up, some of us. There's a term in education called the flipped classroom, where the idea is you take something you would teach in your classroom, you host it online to give classroom time, so better, weightier, more interesting things, things of more merit. So I've had a grammar channel for over a decade on YouTube. So that was nice because I didn't necessarily have to lecture on grammar. I'd already done those videos. I had done exercises. So that helped in that they could handle all the grammar, and then we would come back and kind of take 10 of those 40 minutes to handle questions or problematic sentences that they had. And then we could devote the rest of that time to better stuff like discussion of literature and all that kind of thing. And Brian, I need to know how to, I'm hoping in our in-service training, if we're going to do an online thing, I'm hoping that I need to know how to show something on the screen while I'm still talking. Because that's huge, particularly when you're teaching a film class, to be able to show a clip and say, okay, let's break this down. That's a huge aspect that we weren't trained for. And I still don't know. I don't know if you guys had gotten into this because I was away and I was looking at the comments. I still don't know if what we are going to do, because our school has literally made 2 different decisions in the past week, and we're kind of going on a third. So
we haven't really got into what next year is going to look like, but
okay.
I can agree with you that there needs to be, and Matthew, you may have already done this since your school's starting back so early. My school's starting back next week as well. Students need to have some here's what your expectations are.
Totally.
Right? Because we'd already established all of our expectations and class procedures, and then they changed the whole script on us. And can we make the students turn their cameras on so we can actually read the room? Because not it's just dead. If all you see is names and boxes, I mean, you cannot read the room to see who's getting, who's not, or whether they're paying attention or any of that stuff. So
and before I pass this over to John, Brian, I wanted to say Holly's question, because it's not something we're going to necessarily answer right now, but it's something we can probably talk about. It was, how much regression do you feel you saw in your students over the spring? All right. So that was Holly's question. John, go ahead.
Yeah. My experience was slightly different, I would say, in that our students, again, we live in or the school is in a more impoverished area. Not a lot of people had access to technology. So when the decision was made, and of course, I don't know if you guys recall this week, because teachers all kind of are running the same circles, right? When that week started, I remember seeing a bunch of my teacher friends, we were zipping memes around saying, okay, we've got a full moon. It's Friday the 13th. There's all this crazy stuff going on this week. And then COVID happened. And I remember Thursday, they basically emailed us and said, end of your procedure, clean your room out as if you're not coming back, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. We're going to fumigate the place, do a deep clean, and we'll be back. And I remember standing out in the hall with the band and choir teacher and saying, what do you think, a month? And here we are, right? But it was similar in the aspect that, immediately admin and Board of Ed started to kind of go into problem solving mode. And right. I have a lot of respect, Matthew, for admins, because hands behind your back, blindfolded, trying to solve a problem. You know what I mean? And in putting out a fire, and it was impossible. So the best thing that they could come up with is let's send out a survey and see who has access to technology. Let's send out postcards and see who has access to technology. Like, seriously, this is what was done in Salisbury, Maryland, where I teach. So the information came back, and what they decided to do was we would be purely distance learning, but there would be no synchronous instruction. It would be all asynchronous. So in other words, teachers would record things, Brian, like you were saying, and students would have access to that. Grades pretty much didn't count. It was either pass or fail. So either it was complete or incomplete. And complete was basically, you did something. You answered one question. And again, we can get into regression because that is the question on the table, but we'll move to that in a minute. But as a music teacher and as an arts teacher, it was very interesting because we really didn't know what we'd be doing. And what they did is they took all related arts and they said, guess what? You guys aren't teaching, at least for this first cycle. They said, we want core studies only. And so you're going to be providing support. Now, that's a word that any educator hears and probably craps their pants in the process, because we all know what that means. So basically, related arts teachers were reduced to kind of playing police. So we were talking about, Brian, I think you had mentioned earlier, how do we know if students are even complying with this? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? Who's reporting, who's not reporting? And so we've made phone calls for weeks just to deal with sort of this pseudo truancy issue that was going on. And you have the language barrier. We have a large Haitian community, a large Spanish community. So we had to then turn that over to translators and allow them to report that, some kids who can speak English were saying that they couldn't understand the messages that admins were. It was, so this continued. The arts teachers, I did not do any instruction at all from March 13th. I've literally been in a support role. So what they did is we did continuing education. So I got to take some courses from Harvard, which is great. Add that to my PD.
Good.
Yeah, it was great. And then I literally wrote my curriculum for the entire next year and dumped it into Google Classroom. So, once we get started with this thing, I'm ready to go. I have everything done. So in that sense, it was good, but it was hard because, you're sitting on the bench. At least it would have been nice to be involved more than just feeling like having to be the bad guy all the time and chasing kids down. But that was my experience by and large.
Yeah, I think a lot of school districts have figured out ways to try to use the people that they were their employees, whether it's cafeteria workers and bus drivers and custodians. They've tried to repurpose those and kind of figure out ways to keep them employed so they can still get a check. Matthew, you're going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that, similar in that experience, John, I've got elementary age kiddos, and it was far different for them than even it was for our high school students. We kind of took different, almost approaches. And, but I was still reporting to the building, and Brian, I had all of our support staff in the building trying to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it was just an interesting dynamic. And one, I think that we are all clinging to the idea that we're just going to get through it. And now I think that hopefully we have a little bit better idea of what we can do, moving forward, depending on what the school year is going to look like for your district and where you are and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, so rolling it forward, let's talk about what we know. So, Joe was telling me earlier he wasn't exactly sure, and that's the hard part with this thing is you keep waiting on somebody else to make a decision. Or, back when we first started, it was the school district made one decision, and then the state would come in and make their other one. And then the school district had to interpret and come up with the way they were going to interpret the rules made by the state. So it was a lot of changing and dangling carrots on, are we going back to school or not? So I think a lot of school districts hopefully are taking that into consideration for this year. For North Carolina, our governor said that you could come in with a hybrid plan. There's like A, B, and C. A was kind of minimal social distancing, but with the spike in cases, he said it has to be at least the maximum social distancing, or you could go all remote. If you do the hybrid model, you also have to make sure you give parents and students an option to be all virtual if they're uncomfortable. So a lot of the bigger school districts are just saying, okay, we don't know how in the world to do the logistics on this hybrid thing, because it's like, okay, do we go 2 days a week, one group, 2 days a week with another group? Do we try to get all the elementary in every single day and have a high school all remote? We've had that floated by, but we're going to be doing all remote learning, everybody in the county for the first 9 weeks, which it was 5 weeks, and now they just said 9 weeks, which is good. I want it to be a whole grading period. That way, when we come in and we have everything set up, we know what the plan is. And then they're going to reassess and try to figure out how they're going to do the hybrid situation. And they have not voted on which hybrid they're going to try to do when we go back. But we're all virtual, so at least we kind of know what that is. Now I got to figure out how to teach all this stuff. It's like I have to go back to, I don't want to use all the stuff in my notebook and just take a picture of it. I want to try to use some of that online stuff. But as Joe was saying, like, we don't know how to do some of this stuff. And they didn't really tell us. They gave us nothing. So they said, go, you're teaching online. So some people were using Zoom. Some people were using Google Meet, and some people were doing this and that and the other. And then they started having training for stuff. And by the time that they come out with the training, we were already past that and kind of going in our own direction. So hopefully it'll be a little bit more uniform on some of that stuff. Matthew, what's your school looking like for this year? I know you're starting back next week.
Yeah, so we our first student day is August 13th, and we are full in person at this time, and so we're
in person for
everybody in our district.
Wow.
We're planning 5 days a week. We're in similar. Indiana has a 3-tier model right now. We're in that moderate stage. And so there's a lot of flexibility within that. One neighboring district is going all remote. One neighboring district is going, kind of a hybrid where they're online 3 days a week, in person 2 days a week. My district is going 5 days. Now we have a virtual option for any family that chooses to. That'll be completely online. So we're kind of juggling both of those things. Naturally, when we're starting 5 days a week in person, and there's a whole host of modifications and accommodations that are happening for social distancing.
So you have smaller classes? I mean, or 6 feet apart kind of thing?
Well, yes. So, we've reduced class sizes. We've had to clear out, and we've moved some different areas. It's been a logistical challenge for sure. It is. And, like cafeteria alone, we traditionally have, 500 students in a lunch. Mm-hmm. So we've moved from one cafeteria. Now we have 4 or a pending 5th lunch zone. And so just the food dynamic of trying to get those lunches in certain spots is going to be a little bit of a challenge within itself too. So we're kind of juggling with that. Obviously, in the back of their mind, there's always that contingency of, what happens if there is a spike in cases. And, we have to move to remote learning for a period of time. So we're kind of juggling all those things with our teachers. And the shout out to you guys and to them, heroes. I tell you, you guys show up and flexibility and just do what's needed. And that passion for kids rings true.
Yeah, I've always said flexibility's got to be your middle name if you're a teacher, but never more so than this past year and this year for sure. Mask? You guys have to wear masks?
So currently, right now in Indiana, we are in a mask state. So we have an executive order through the end of August. Interior public places are required. We are requiring masks of both faculty, staff, and students at this point. And when we return.
Right. That's interesting. Yep. And Holly was asking a question about virtual. Do you have a number of students that you know of that are going to take the virtual option?
Right now we're at about 10%. They have another week to declare, but we're at about 10%.
So will they be taught by different teachers or teachers at your school? Or
so they are being taught by our corporation teachers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the virtual school idea is becoming interesting for our district. They opened two virtual schools. Mm-hmm. So and they're already talking about when all this is over to keep them kind of like a magnet school.
Right. So interesting enough, amidst all of this, we had already had plans this year. We were in a transition year to begin with when all this happened in March. We were in a consolidation. We were closing a few elementary buildings, so they were consolidating together. But we were also creating a virtual program to be started up this year already. So we've kind of, just when one thing goes, just do it all, right? Why not change?
Well,
so here we go.
The district gets more money too. Besides trying to meet everybody's needs, they are getting more money if they keep them from going to a private school or to keep them going from a charter school.
And we were experiencing a lot of that. I would say that a lot of places were experiencing that virtual move, and we can argue the effectiveness of it at some other point, but we were seeing a lot of students leave our brick and mortar building to go to a virtual platform, and so that's the incentive to offer it. And so we're kind of starting that. And then right now we're at about 10 or 12% of our student population that has chosen that virtual option for this school year.
So Sue, I want to ask at your school, Matthew, are you still going a full day, full 7-hour day kind of thing?
Right now, yes, we are in a full day. Mm-hmm.
Do you have to stagger the buses and the cars?
They're stagger start and they're staggered dismissal. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
And then, from John's perspective with the arts, that dynamic is going to look different at the elementary buildings this year than it is for, even our high school. But, our elementaries are going to be stationary students for the most part, and teachers are going to move some to minimize some of that distancing and crossing. And I really think that lends to that tracing kind of idea. For the protection of students and staff and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, one of the memes I saw was it was like Scooby Doo in the gang trying to look to see. Have you seen that meme where they find substitutes? When somebody gets exposed because you can't find substitutes anyway.
Right now, one of the things our corporation did,
retired or older folks anyway, and you're like,
we've hired a couple permanent subs.
I mean, that's 2 weeks that you're out of commission, yet I bet I still have to teach somehow.
Right.
It's going to be interesting. Joe, you say you don't know everything yet. You got some
right.
On the table.
I'm going to address a lot of things real quick here. First, I wanted to shout out to Matthew. I mean, everyone always says, we have a hard job. And okay, but I think of a lot of other jobs that are harder. But you don't have quality leadership. There's no way that then you're just sending the teacher adrift on an island. And I could tell the interactions I've had with Matthew as Brothers Groom, part of Brothers Groom, that he'd be a principal I would love to work for. And I'm sure he's doing the best he can for his people.
Hey, Joe, I got an English opening right now. Come on, brother. I'll buy your plane ticket.
We've got a math opening if you guys know any math teachers for
real quick. There's a school district here in Western Pennsylvania that I think has similar dynamics to John's district. It is suburban but close to inner city. It's got a lot of diversity, and it also doesn't have a lot. It's lower socioeconomically in the like average median household, whatever. There, just a day or two ago, their superintendent said something that I thought was really, really prescient. He said he's going. It's been very challenging. Well, this goes back to leadership. It's been very challenging. It would be very helpful if there were more standards or expectations that are clear, which I totally echo. But this is the statement. I have a doctorate, but it's an education. It's not a medical degree. I'm having to make medical decisions I'm just not comfortable with. And I think that is nationwide. That we are not in our wheelhouse, right? When it comes to our admins, they're making decisions with, sometimes when you look, even at the CDC's outlines, if you look at them, has a lot of this phrase. Go ahead, babe. Where feasible. And to me, that's a very scary phrase because it opens up for the room for if you're a district without a lot of money, if you're a district without a lot of room, and there's a pressure to have in-person classes, that you might have to cut corners to handle all those, people that are speaking at you and making you like between the parents and the superintendent and all that. So it's a scary. I think it can be a very scary thing in some districts. We got shot down. Our district, we were going to do either what a lot of districts are doing, either all in person or all cyber. And then our local, I forget if it was state or county health commission, shot it down. Said no, this isn't good enough. This plan isn't good enough. So that means everyone at the admin level had to go back. And when I mean at the admin level, I mean the tippy top superintendent, our building principals, who I absolutely love, Matthew. They're just like, they're three great guys. They want to do the best for us so we can do our best, right? They're kind of like, what is going on now? So we're still completely in the dark. But now we have moved to a hybrid system. I wish I could tell you more about it. It seems we're going to do hybrid with an AB. So, kids at last names, letters A through K go Monday to whatever. So I'm thinking, here's a question maybe you could answer, Matthew, because you have to plan this stuff. So if I have kids from A through K coming in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I have kids, L through Z coming in Thursday, Friday, I'm never online because I'm in the class teaching all those kids, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is the question that when we talked about hybrid, and our discussion really wasn't that long for hybrid, at least for our district, because of the juggling demand that would create on teachers, because simultaneously you're going to have kids in class and you're going to have kids in virtual class. So I don't know exactly how that virtual component's going to be. It's going to be more, I would assume, a homework day as opposed to a discovery discussion type of day. So I don't know how that's going to work. And also my quandary in that, and I think that what we all learned in the spring was that relational component that we miss in the classroom, and you can't replace. Great instruction, but at the same time, it's that connection that I think we long for, and that is the dynamic that is so challenging to create online. If there's a checklist of 5 things, then some of our best learners can just check them off and be done. But it's that connection that that engages one another, and that's what you're going to miss within that hybrid schedule, to some degree. And so what that accomplishes is it allows for that maximum social distancing,
right?
And then we get into the whole idea, like our students. I see them out eating, out in town. How much distancing is going on already, and that's going to be a unique challenge as we return to the building.
Right.
In classrooms, it's going to be, they're going to do what's expected, and they're going to follow procedures for the most part. But, what's that dynamic going to look like during those non-structured school times? So
might be a lot like Major League Baseball, I'm afraid.
Last thing I want to say,
we're not testing all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So we won't be testing on the kids like they test in baseball. So by the time.
Yeah, we're not inside a bubble.
No, by the time we figure baseball,
the bubble works. Here, Bob Costas had a line that I thought was gorgeous. MLB had to have a 106-page, I believe it was 106, definitely over 106-page document to play baseball in the COVID. And Bob Costas said, if you have 106-page, if a 106-page document is necessary, do you think maybe you shouldn't play? And, I guess my take there is, and before I throw it to John, this is the last thing I wanted to say. I have a super high-risk daughter. I'm a high-risk student. I have petitioned my district to teach online for the reason of my daughter. We're keeping our 2 other kids home because of our daughter. I've got a basketball player and a soccer player. We're not going to let them play sports because of our daughter. All right. But I'm still scared for me because I'm fat. I'm no spring chicken. And I've got a couple other things going on. I love nothing more than getting in front of those kids and doing my thing. That is my love and joy. As we all know, it's not a job. It's a passion. It's a calling to get out and do those things. But I am truly afraid to walk back into that building and do it 5 days a week for her and for me. John?
So, and I mean, I echo all those sentiments, and I think that part of the reason that where I teach in Maryland, part of the reason that they decided to do what they did has to do with, that hybrid model being a big challenge, especially with so many children in our school building. Is a very old school building. It's, it was built in the 1920s. It's not really meant to handle the student load that we have. And they just decided in my county in Maryland 2 days ago that we would be distance learning through the first semester. I will physically not return to school until February.
Wow.
And part of the reason that they decided to do that, it would seem, is again because the population is very high for our schools. We service a large suburban area. And a lot of these kids, they're coming to school anyway with a boatload of issues and a boatload of family situations, and tracking people who stay here one day but not here another day, and stay here on alternating weeks and there on alternating weeks. It would have just been a logistical nightmare. And so in that respect, I think that they made a good decision. And just speaking for me personally, because I'm a general music teacher and an arts teacher, I have a lot of children in my classroom. My highest class was 35 kids, and we were in a room that's no bigger than my dining room. So it would have been very challenging to do that. And so in that respect, I'm glad that they pushed it out as far as they did. And again, because it would have been one of these scenarios where if one kid is sick, or if one teacher is sick, or if one worker comes in and they're delivering food to the lunchroom and they're sick, then what do you do? Do you shut down again for 2 whole weeks? And so the board just decided across the board to just push it to January 29th, which is the end of the first marking period, and then we'll be returning in February. So it's not lost on me that by the time I return to school, I will have literally not been in the classroom for almost an entire calendar year. So let that sink in.
There's no guarantee you go back and
Brian, that's exactly right. By the way, in the peak of flu season, right? So I can't imagine that. I basically have chalked this year up to teaching at home, fully distance learning. I would not be surprised if that ends up being the case. I really hope that it doesn't. But at the end of the day, we're teachers. We're the most adaptable people on the planet. We think on our feet routinely. And I think it's going to be okay. At least for us, it's going to be a challenge. I know my wife just took a job where she's working from home. Her desk is literally on the other side of me. So I'm going to have to figure out what we're going to do. They still haven't given us as educators a full plan yet in the state of Maryland, at least in our district. August 11th, they're supposedly coming out with a step-by-step. It's going to be a mix of synchronous and asynchronous learning, primarily through Google Classrooms and through Zoom. So that's what they've given us so far. Now, my arts supervisor said, buckle up, it's about to get interesting. Because evidently for arts teachers, there might be some different protocols that we have to follow and everything, and that's fine. Now, Joe, what you said earlier is very germane, and that is that our kids go to a different school district. They just voted the hybrid model. So we are kind of in a boat there, and we've elected to keep our kids home. I think it just makes sense for us. But the question is going to be, once I get my breakdown of what the county wants us to do on the 11th, is that even possible? Am I going to be able to stand here, have my 6 and 8-year-old working over there? By the way, my year-old infant son running around in the house somewhere, and teaching how to count to 4 and sometimes 6. It's going to be very interesting. And yes, Mycroft Jones, I have no idea what an online music class looks like, but music teachers aren't creative people. So yeah, we're going to be.
Well, John, I've heard Joe sing, so we could just tune in right now. We could practice together.
John, both of my twins have intro to guitar, and they're going to stay home. And I'm like, how's that going to work? Tell me, District. I know Brian. I could hire Brian to tutor him.
Now, Brian, banjo man. I'm sure he's got an instrument within reach.
Right here, I play it when I do my live streams with my class. You got to try to make those connections, and luckily I already made the connections with those classes. But that's why I like having the content video that they can watch anytime, and it can be a lot looser in the live stream. So I'll play the guitar, and when they're popping in, waiting on everybody to show up, I'll ask them a random question of the day, like what you watching on Netflix these days.
And that really begs the question, Brian. When you speak to, you already had a relationship with some of those kids when we went into the spring. Mm-hmm. Next week when you start your virtual classes, I'm assuming that's going to be mostly a roster full of new students, or at least new to Mr. Haywood.
Well, actually, I got lucky in a way, and another way I didn't. Up until Tuesday of this week, I thought I was teaching one class, and then they switched me because we couldn't find another math teacher. So now I'm teaching instead
your license got you.
Instead of one prep of something that I'm really familiar with and had planned on all summer. Now I'm teaching AP Calculus and Pre-Calculus, which is really tough. I'm not an AP Calculus expert. I've taught it, but it's a lot of work. So, but I get to move up with all my kids who took me last year. So every kid I've got now, I had last year.
Oh, that's great.
That part's
Oh,
right in that way.
Mhm.
Not looking other ways. And you, Matthew, how would you like this? We have a new principal coming in.
Oh, hell. How about
How
that?
does it feel to you being a new principal? And his first day on the job is this coming Monday, August 2nd. First day of
Well,
school is Wednesday.
I'm sure you will have the perfect product and a tie on for your evaluation that day.
Yeah.
We have a brand new super.
I'm interested in what you saw
Really?
because being a principal and you evaluate teachers and stuff, I'm sure you saw all different kind of things. It's like some teachers really had it together and some teachers didn't have a clue what they were doing because of the technology.
I'm sure that your guys' building would have to be similar in the fact that we have quite a bit of a teacher autonomy, at least in our building, and so you have all sorts of styles and a lot of that is encouraged from us administration. As far as what's effective in your classroom and that kind of thing. There's not you need to do A, B, and C. Here it is, teach it. There's a lot of autonomy, and then naturally that also spilled over. To online. And what I did see when we moved to that virtual component was a different type of collaboration amongst the faculty. There was a lot of sharing of, like, hey, I did this, or hey, what works for you, those kind of things. And so that was great to be a part of. Everybody was kind of just knocked down the rung, if you will, and we were all kind of learning together. And so that was great to see that growth mindset working.
Yeah, for me, I ended up. It just takes forever to do something that should be like this. It takes forever to figure out how to get it online.
Mm-hmm.
Get them, Joe. Be a dad. There, you got the DAD.
Yeah.
That's fine. And whether you're a teacher or not, everybody was working from home, except for Matthew. They made him go in.
But no, you believe that? No.
I'm not. But I would work from the time I woke up all the way till bedtime. And I forgot something. Let me go do this real quick.
So we were home for 2 weeks at home work, which was a unique challenge. I had more meetings when we were at home with this Zoom thing. It seemed like we just met all day.
You stuck on the computer screen. Ugh.
Yeah. So we had a lot of meetings. Now, John, what was interesting was you were talking about was the kiddos. I've got 4 children of my own. And here my wife works from home. So we were all here trying to juggle what breakfast and lunch and dinner looked like, let alone this learning thing. It was quite an experience for sure.
Hey guys, Holly had a good question earlier. I answered it my way in the chat, but I thought it was very pertinent. She asks, what do you guys all think would be the best use of parents' time in preparing their kids for virtual learning? What makes your lives easier?
What did you say? Yeah, make them accountable. Yeah, I would. Whether they make you not or not, make sure they turn their video on so the teacher can see them. I don't know. You're going to have to be in touch with the teacher too, just to see what's going on, because everybody's set up completely different.
The hard thing is it's Holly. It's a big ask, and for the people who are parents, Joe, you were talking about that, and Matthew obviously as well, with having to manage everything that you're managing outside of the home, and then your kids there as well at the house, and being a teacher. I kind of got to experience on both ends what that was like, and I know Juliana and I were always in communication with our kids' educators. Yeah. We just, we were those parents who just wouldn't let up on that, and we literally tried our best, and not always succeeded, but we tried our best to keep a routine every day.
Yeah.
That's huge. You're at home. We're really at school, guys. I know this is our house, and I know you want to do video games. I know you want to stay in your pajamas. Nope, we're getting dressed. We're going to school. It's as if we're physically going to be there. And that sucks, and it's hard. But I think with our kids, that ended up being the thing that really made it a little bit less terrible is probably the best way I can say it. And, we've got people talking about IEPs. and our oldest is on the spectrum. And so we were in and out of meetings all week for him as well, in addition to just his general education, which was also tailored by his special ed teacher, which God bless those people. They have had to not only adjust to this, but then they've had to drag themselves through the sea of paperwork that has to come with it. And then tailor and craft their lessons for those kids and corroborate with the people who are doing, the psychology, the people that are helping them with motion and motor skills and everything that comes with that. It's been incredible. But I would say communication for sure, and just establishing that routine, as obnoxious as it is, I think it is one of those things that we saw paid dividends and allowed us to at least maintain a slight semblance of sanity, what little of it was left.
If there's any way to get study groups together, because that's the piece they're missing a lot of times is yes, it's social interaction, but it's also communicating and kind of, your auditory, you're hearing it, you're kind of working it out on the fly. So the Zoom breakout groups is good for that, for the teacher standpoint. But if there's some way you can kind of foster that and say, hey, why don't you get together when so-and-so and so-and-so on a group chat and that kind of thing, kind of depends on the age student, that kind of thing we're talking about. Anybody else have any ideas?
The only thing I would add, and this looks different for me as a dad with elementary kiddos as opposed to administrator at a high school building. Routine is good, but also just our mindset and, priorities. If families, at home are, challenging what's happening, or they've got lots of opinions, or, they kind of downplay the importance of a certain role or a certain priority. That's the biggest thing. The kiddos pick up on that pretty quickly at all ages, and they kind of echo that sentiment. And so, John, I love your idea of, it's like, hey, we're getting up, everybody's getting ready. We're going to the game, which is school, and here we are. And I think that would hopefully, help kind of, create some of that routine. But
and I think this is also key. It's something that's bothered me about this whole COVID it seemed like at the beginning we came together, and as it's gone on, we haven't been so together. Man, if there's ever a time communities need to band together,
yes,
it's the school challenge, right? But we were able to we were able to kind of limp along through it from March to June. But now we're all nationwide in the same exact position. Even if we aren't doing the same things, all of us got to go back to work with kids in the house, with not in the house. We have to come together in our small communities, or it just won't work. It just won't. It's already going to have a tough enough time working anyway, but it's just not going to if we can't pull together.
Yeah, we definitely have, at least we should have learned some stuff, and now we've got some more structure we can put in place, and it's not just waiting around every day to see what's going to happen, right? You can kind of go forward a little bit more, even though there's still some of that unknown, especially when you get kids back in the school building. But hopefully there's enough stability there that we can move forward. And there's going to be some structure in place and some accountability, and we all have to get on with life in one way or the other as best we can. So hopefully that'll help. As you guys talked a little bit about dealing with your own kids in the house, I don't have that luxury or that privilege here. I don't have any kids. It was just my wife and myself. What else you guys got on your mind? Just trying to figure out. We got any more questions in the chat?
None that I really saw. Big Man Bearded asked about busing, and I addressed it.
We'll have to socially distance, so they're going to figure out a way to just sit in every other seat. But I don't know. Yeah. We don't have bus drivers as it is, so I think they're going to have to count on so many people doing virtual school, that they're not going to need as many seats on the bus. I don't know.
It's one of those. It's such an important thing, though, because it's one of the side of schooling that not a lot of people often think about is the economics of that. Like, without bus drivers, kids aren't getting there, right? Or without buses. So, can you hire more buses, hire more teachers to do the one kid per seat model or the staggered? And once again, it's haves versus have-nots. Not every school district is equal, right? So that already sets some student or some districts behind the 8 ball, because one of the responders in the chat said they're handling it with masks and hand sanitizer, no social distancing. I mean, how is that really going to be expected to work for the entirety of this year, let alone in the future? And it's just troublesome to me to think that we can't even master something as simple as going from point A to point B.
Matthew, you doing any screening at the door or screening before they get on the bus? Like, we're gonna have to like take their temperature when they walk in the door.
We don't have any plans for temperature checks. There is a protocol for self-med checks with families. Kind of the corporations come out with a statement. That's what we see on the CDC as far as X, Y's, and Z's. From a busing standpoint, one of the things that we spent great length at creating for our corporation is kind of a redesign of that transportation model, in the fact that we would have an elementary bus, a middle school bus, and a high school bus, essentially run that same route, and pick up the different kiddos from one house that had in those different buildings. Now they're going to kind of hybrid those models where families are going to kind of board those same buses, and then they're going to socially distance together, and with some separations of seats. Mask will be required, but so family will be able to sit together, but then there's going to be kind of 2 empty rows, as that model, as they stagger that bus back. So we've had to add just a few extra buses, and some of those challenges will only recreate themselves as we move into the beginning of the year. The things that we can think about and plan for, we're trying, but then there's going to be a whole host of problems that we've not even thought about yet. When we return to school, when we return to these hybrid models, even when we're just virtually learning.
Yeah, it's not going to be the way it was before.
Right.
That's what a lot of people are thinking. We'll just send them back to school, and it's going to be school, and it's going to look totally different because you can't do group work.
No.
Right? You're better off staying on virtual and putting you in a Zoom.
We have a series of, there's no good decision. It's just a series of problematic ones. Mm-hmm. And to this teacher, and I'll be honest, this is dad, because my being a dad also informs my being a teacher. The best overall for me is the cyber model. But I also realize that works best for middle and high school. That's a lot harder on elementary kids, that cyber model. That's a lot harder on elementary kids. So there's all sorts of stuff there. And real quick, though, Phil Velasco says his school system recommended parents taking their kids to and from school. And again, that's that idea of the haves and the have-nots. How can you? What's that? What's that, Brian?
I said there's the equity, right? It's not
right. You can't, I don't know. That's a real frustrating. The economics of education frustrates me most particularly in a time like this, because it's going to eventually lead to the downfall of various districts through no fault of their own, through all the great planning and everything else. The economics are going to become a part of the picture quickly.
And from a purely logistical standpoint, too, I know our district, I think we clocked the logistics last year, and it was 65% of our students walked to school.
Wow.
So how are you going to be able to guarantee that they didn't stop in somewhere, stop at a 7-Eleven, pick up a drink, go somewhere where there may not have been social distancing, if they were around somebody else? Yes, it's a very high percentage, Holly, 65%. Over half of the school walks. And, again, we get into, like Joe, like you were saying, just the logistics of that are going to be extremely problematic, notwithstanding the ones that would be bused or have their parents bring them to school. So I think, again, that's part of the reason why we've just made the decision as a county to put it all online. They will be now, I know that they sent out a sort of another round of surveys to find out exactly who has maybe changed their technology issues since the end of the school year. Yeah. They are going to try to get everyone some piece of technology so that they'll be able to interact, because it's going strictly virtual. It's wild. The things you never thought you'd have to think of.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Phillips, one question I've got for you is, in your communities with those kind of announced plans, what is their feedback? I mean, what is the community saying? Are they?
You get you get all sides. You get all sides. We have some parents that are protesting to have their kids to play sports, and we're not even meeting in school, right? We're
Right.
on to play sports. So
Yeah.
they want what they think's best for their student.
Mm-hmm.
And for some students, we talked about the equity part. For some students, going to a classroom environment is better for them, right?
Yeah.
But for some, they think of what you're asking a fifth grader to do is they have to go sit 6 feet apart from somebody wearing a mask, teachers wearing a mask, socially distanced all day long. That's not very comfortable. But for some students, that's a better environment than what they've got at home. For some students that have everything they need at home, that's much more comfortable to be able to do school from there. So it's a catch-22, and there's no perfect solution by any means.
Sorry for any background noise. We're grinding ice. That's what we do. Now, obviously, this is an equity issue, but this to me is my perfect scenario. And I think as a nation, if we work towards this, and you guys can shoot down, you can tell me what's wrong with my plan here, but to me, this is perfect scenario. You take that model of half the kids one day and half the kids the other, right? You put a teacher in the classroom, you split the kids in half, and you project to the kids so that the kids can watch the live classroom lecture at home. And then you flip-flop kids. So you're protecting the teacher by lessening the class size. You take a class of 25, you bring it down to 12 or 13. The other 12 or 13 are still at home getting the interaction of a live teacher lecture or lesson, etc. And then those kids come in the next day, and then you flip-flop that. To me, that is one of the better ideas. Now, obviously, you got all sorts of issues there. I realize all the issues, but it is. I'm of the opinion that this is not the only school year we're going to be dealing with this issue. And I think we are being not too forward-looking if we think that's the case. I think we really have to at least be planning, if not implementing, but at least be planning for 1 to 2 more possible years of this. Hopefully in smaller doses, but, until we can get a handle on this with medicine. So if we, in those districts that could do something like that, I think that's a not a perfect scenario, but a near perfect scenario. Now go ahead and tell me why I'm wrong, if you can. Now, and I'm not being arrogant there. I'm like, there's no way this random dude in the middle of nowhere thought of something, because I'm thinking about my kids and I'm thinking about the kids I teach when we talk about that personal interaction, because it's not the same if we put 12 kids in a classroom and I lecture from home. It's not the same dynamic, right? There's something about that person-to-person thing. And if you're constantly alternating the kids are getting 3 days a week, in 2 to 3 days a week in person, they're getting that connection with their teacher. And then the other 2 or 3 days, they're still getting the connection. It's just from a distance.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad scenario.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think the thing that gets everybody derailed, or at least it derails me, is the contingency plans for what happens if one person gets sick. This could just be something where, okay, that system might have worked, and then one person gets sick. Now, this thing is a 2-week deal, right? So now we're in 2 weeks, we shut everything down, we decontaminate, we're back to square one. Yeah. And then someone's going to say, well, that didn't work, so now what?
Yeah,
right. And believe me, I just, more than anything else, I want my classroom back. I want to be in front of the kids. I miss my students, but it's a catch-22, 100%. That is so far the most, I think, reasonable approach. But again, what's going to happen, in that contingency scenario, right?
Yeah. I'm planning on keeping all of my assignments and everything on the online platform, probably for the rest of the time I ever teach, right? Because what happens whether you're at school or not, then you've got the online platform. I've made videos, that kind of stuff that's already posted. I'm planning on just keeping the online platform, even if we go back to the hybrid model, because you never know who's going to be there and who's not. So it's just going to be easier to do it that way, I think.
Yeah.
I've honestly thought of investing more for my tech ability, so I could do, I know, just little things like actually being a reviewer or a personality, whatever, in the bearded community made me think about, what if I did hold class outside? Like I held my class outside, like I sat by the river and I taught from the outside, just little tweaks and things like that, just to offer a different experience, just so it's not Mr. Ayers with the couch behind him, that whole thing, just something that invigorates even the visual senses enough to say, oh, check that out, he's outside. I don't know. I've been trying to come up with lots of things, because I particularly in the fall here, I think there's going to be some portion of every district that's got to be going virtual. Whether you're starting there or we have this flu COVID combination that people are talking about. I don't know, guys. Now I'm at the perplexed tongue tripping stage.
How do you use, Joe? What platform do you use, Joe? Zoom?
Last year we used Zoom, and we have Schoology. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Schoology, but it's just one of those, this is where you put all your stuff. So that's where I handle all the academics, and I use Zoom for the lecturing, interpersonal stuff.
Did you play around with the virtual background so it looks like you're in Hawaii and stuff?
No. See, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, Brian.
That's automatically on Zoom. Plus, you can upload more things in the background.
We'll talk. Brian started, by the way, when this all started, Brian was very afraid, because he was even saying, I still use overhead projector. He was very like nuts and bolts. And he's flourished wonderfully based on little chats we've had as we've gone along, which just shows you the dedication of one particular teacher in the worst subject in the world.
Hey, now. Hey, now.
You see that expo board in his background, don't you?
Yeah, you see my whiteboard, right?
He's going to get there and show us.
I'm going to teach you something.
See, that's it, Brian. But Brian's a musician too, so he's not totally just the math and science guy. He dabbles in the arts with us art guys.
Do what you got to do to make it through.
That's right.
You guys have anything else? Any more questions in the chat? Type them in. If you guys have any other comments or anything you wanted to address, if not, we can end it here pretty soon. It's way past my bedtime. Of course, it was past my bedtime when we started, but made an exception because I wanted to get you guys together.
I think for me, one of the things that I've been trying to really challenge myself with is just keeping myself aware that this is a for now thing. I know that, there's some people that think that this is forever and it's always going to be like this. And we know that they're working on a vaccine, so let's hope that gets going and we get it out there. But listen, from a musical perspective, I was dying inside because I'm thinking of my choral colleagues and my band colleagues who pretty much are not going to be able to do any of that for a long time. And that made me grieve. But I thought to myself, you know what? Some of the greatest music in history was written during a time period where a third of Europe disappeared. And they are still singing now. We're still playing instruments now. We're still advancing education now. And that was back in, the 1500s, or 1300s, and so it's one of these things where it's like, you just have to, you're kind of in this zone and you think, okay, well, it's changed forever, and maybe it will be, but I think, we're all smart here. And I think if we band together and keep our minds focused on pushing through this thing, I just think there is another side, and I try to see the light at the other side of the tunnel, because there are many days, you can ask Juliana, I just sit here and I say to myself, are you kidding me? Really? On almost a year out of my classroom. And I know from just talking to other educators and obviously getting to know you guys tonight, everybody doesn't want this. We want to be back. We want to be the way that it was before. But I think as long as we keep having these conversations and working forward, we'll get back there. We'll get back there.
This is good to have both John and I on the panel, because I'm the old curmudgeonly, it's going to be 10 years. I don't think it's going to be 10 years. I think John is the, the bright-eyed, like, yes, we're gonna conquer this thing. This is just our level, which is good because I have that optimism. I just have to have the more realism due to just what's going on in my household, John. But I would love for that vaccine to pop up, and in June of next year, next year we're back in full speed running kind of thing.
It'd be great, but if it doesn't happen, you know what? We've got a year of distance learning under our belts, and and we'll know how to do it.
Right.
I'll definitely use a lot of these tools that I've learned. I'll
there
use
you
them
go.
from here on out. I've learned so much in the past 6 months. It's kind of because you just forced your hand. I've always wanted to digitize some of my stuff anyway, and now I don't have a choice, right? So
I have two things to say here, Brian.
Sure.
Real quick. One was a comment in the chat. And I don't know if you saw it. I saw you smile. Maybe you saw it. But Big Man Bearded said this should be a weekly show. Now, I don't know if we could pull off a weekly show, but I was going to say to you, Brian, maybe we could have touch points as we go along through the fall where we come back and do this again just to see how everyone's doing it. I think that would be very good. So we're going to leave that to Brian because he knows how to handle it on this end. I wanted to say very much, my girl who has all the challenges, Ariana, who has Down syndrome, she was a senior this year, and it was a big deal to her. And as much as we're talking about everyone else, we got to remember these kids are not getting, and I'm just talking upper level, these kids are not getting the high school experience that they have so, heard about throughout their parents and grandparents and siblings. And it really, it's really unfortunate. But I've seen every district. This is the amazing thing about educators. Every district I encountered tried their best to get them to that area. And they even did a parade for the graduates in our area. We drove a parade. You're nodding. Maybe you saw the same thing. And that's the beauty. This is what educators can do, and a community when they come together is, shoot, we've got this problem. Let's see. And it wasn't perfect, but it was darn good. I'll tell you that right now. That was a fun thing you would never see, is this tour of cars and beeping and people in our small communities, our two small communities, our school is served by two communities, sitting on the streets like it was an actual parade, lining it for all these kids they didn't even know, waving at cars as they were going by. And 90% of the people my daughter waved at, she had no idea who they were. That was the most beautiful moment I saw come out of this mess last spring.
Nice. Matthew, you got any final thoughts? Give us a pep talk.
Pep talk. I'm 5 foot nothing, but yet here we go. That kind of thing from Rudy, right? Just keep loving your kids. That's all that we can do. They don't fully understand this like you and I do. And so that's what I always try to keep in the back of my head for even my high school kids, but my elementary kids here in the house with me. So we just try to keep that message alive, that, hope, and keep working hard, and we can learn from this. And I'm excited to see what the beginning of the school year is going to look like. And we're pretty optimistic, and hopefully we can tackle that learning.
Great. I appreciate you guys being on here with me. I know it's a commitment to do this on a Friday night, but we've had this plan for a while, so we knew we wanted to kind of talk about it. And maybe we will do another update, maybe in about 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe we'll do another one. And I saw some people comment about having a parent or two in here. These guys are parents, but we could have a non-educator parent in here. Steve, you're volunteering, right? Thanks, see Steve. We'll get Steve or Holly or somebody else in here.
Liven it up. Yeah, they'll keep us on our toes.
That's right. Yeah. Talk about Pop-Tarts and those kind of things.
That's right.
But anyway, we appreciate you guys watching, and we appreciate the guys here on the stream, and maybe we'll see you again soon. But I hope you guys have a great, great school year, and just hang in there. If there's anything we can do for you, having questions, I know all these guys will be glad to try to answer those for you if there's anything we can do to give you a teacher perspective. But I hope you guys have a great weekend, and thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.